par les réseaux criminels pour tirer parti de la situation. La commissaire chargée des Affaires intérieures, Ylva Johansson, a prononcé un discours inaugural ce matin lors de l'événement de lancement du rapport. La grande criminalité organisée représente une menace importante et persistante pour la sécurité des Européens et nous présenterons cette semaine une nouvelle stratégie de l'UE pour lutter contre la criminalité organisée qui définira les outils et les mesures à prendre au cours des 5 prochaines années pour démanteler les modèles économiques et les structures des organisations criminelles par-delà les frontières, y compris sur Internet. De plus amples informations sont disponibles dans notre Daily News ainsi que sur le site d'Europol.
Merci beaucoup, Adalbert. Ceci conclut nos annonces pour aujourd'hui et donc nous passons aux questions-réponses. Et je passe la parole à Christian.
Oui, bonjour. Tu m'entends?
Bien sûr. Vas-y, Christian, je ne te vois pas par contre. Ah si, voilà.
Je crois que je m'y suis mis, là, voilà. Bon, écoute, j'avais plein d'autres questions, mais malheureusement, comme la bataille entre les deux institutions se règle par la Gazette de Bruxelles, j'ai plusieurs questions sur ce qu'on a appelé le sofagate. Ma première, c'est Madame van der Leyen et Charles Michel vont se rencontrer aujourd'hui, si j'ai bien compris. Est-ce que tu peux me dire à quelle heure a lieu cette rencontre? Pourquoi avoir attendu une semaine pour se parler sur cet incident? C'est quand même très long. Est-ce que tu peux me confirmer effectivement l'envoi par les services de Madame van der Leyen d'une espèce de conditionnalité pour régler l'incident en 5 points, dont un des points serait une révision de l'article 15. Est-ce qu'on peut discuter d'une réforme institutionnelle entre 4 yeux au cours d'une réunion hebdomadaire? Est-ce que ce n'est pas quelque chose qui doit remonter beaucoup plus haut? Et ma dernière question, je voudrais comprendre comment l'Union européenne va pouvoir fonctionner maintenant que l'inimitié entre les deux présidents des deux institutions est sur la place publique et que ça va durer, et je pense assez longtemps. Merci à toi.
Merci beaucoup, Christian, et j'espère que nous aurons l'occasion d'arriver à tes questions sur d'autres sujets par la suite. Effectivement. Alors, l'heure de la rencontre est 17 heures. C'est la rencontre hebdomadaire habituelle entre le président du Conseil européen et la présidente de la Commission européenne. Pourquoi ne se sont-ils pas parlé? Écoute, c'est très simple. La présidente d'abord est allée en Jordanie, puis elle était pour la première fois depuis Noël chez elle pour prendre quelques jours de repos bien mérité et reprendre contact avec sa famille qu'elle n'avait pas vue depuis la fin de l'année dernière. Et donc tu comprendras bien que dans ce contexte, évidemment, elle a privilégié un petit peu ses relations familiales, mais elle a aussi travaillé sur quelques dossiers, bien entendu, des dossiers de fond. En ce qui concerne la transmission d'une note de la part de la Commission ou de Björn Seibert à son homologue du Conseil européen, je peux le confirmer, bien entendu, mais il n'y est évidemment nullement question d'une révision quelconque du traité. Il s'agit simplement de mettre en musique les principes que j'ai eu l'occasion d'évoquer ici tout au long de la semaine dernière. Et je peux t'assurer que la coopération entre la présidente de la Commission européenne et le président du Conseil européen continuera, bien entendu, comme il se doit, au bénéfice et dans l'intérêt de l'Union européenne et de ses citoyens. Alors, y a-t-il d'autres questions pour nous sur ce sujet aujourd'hui? Please only keep your hand raised for the moment if your question is related to this issue. So I see a couple of hands raised. Tamar.
About question related to foreign affairs issues. Can I ask you a little bit later?
Please, later. We are trying to finish with the issue of the meeting between the two presidents. Ketevan.
Hello, I have a question about Georgia, so sorry. Not about me.
Get an opportunity later. Please raise your hand when we have finished with this issue. We will go straight to foreign affairs. Jean. Tu as la parole.
Bonjour d'abord, excuse-moi. Je rebondis tout de suite sur la question de Christian. Le mail qui a été envoyé par Seibert, donc à son homologue au Conseil européen, et qui a été en partie révélé par la Gazette officielle, effectivement, Politico, va beaucoup plus loin que ça, puisqu'il s'agit de remettre en cause l'ordre protocolaire. Alors votre interprétation, c'est que les deux présidents sont sur le même plan, ce que ne dit pas l'article 15 et l'article 17 du traité, de même qu'une décision du Conseil européen du 17 octobre 2012 concernant la représentation lors des sommets entre l'Union européenne et les pays tiers. Donc, est-ce que c'est au chef de cabinet de la présidente de dire, ben voilà, comment on va interpréter désormais les traités, et ensuite, est-ce que c'est aux deux institutions de réinterpréter, donc le président du Conseil européen et la présidente de la Commission européenne, d'interpréter les traités. Voilà.
Merci pour ta question, Jean. La semaine dernière, j'ai indiqué, lorsque l'on a posé des questions sur ce sujet, que la présidente avait demandé à ses services
counterparts with their colleagues in the council who were involved with organising the event in Ankara, in order to find a suitable way to ensure that in the future this type of situation would not occur again. And so that was carried out mainly last week, and it is part of that process which led to Seibert sending a mail which shares in many ways our view of the situation. I know that you may not share our view. That is your right. But our interpretation of the rules that are currently in force are reflected there, stating that we need to find a common way to approach these types of events in a harmonised way for future events involving both presidents. Jean, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, thank you for giving me the floor again. I would like to come back to one point, trying to find a kind of modus vivendi between the cabinet of the President, Mr. Seibert, who is suggesting these new arrangements, but there seems to be trying to put one over on the European Council, which isn't quite the same thing, because you're now officially calling to be on the same level as the Council President when there were important discussions on European foreign policy and foreign security policy. And the feeling that we're getting, perhaps we're all completely stupid, it's not impossible. We're only mere journalists. We're not European officials. But the feeling we're getting is that there's an intention to change the treaties, and not just the treaties, but also the precedents and their decisions by the European Council on this order of precedence. So it's really up to you to try to correct that impression, that there seems to be some attempt to change the interpretation of the articles.
Thank you. I'm surprised that you have been able to interpret the content of an email that we have not disclosed the content of here. Perhaps you have access to that text. But at this stage, what I can say is that, once again, for the institutions, for the presidents of the European Commission, she intends to find a modus vivendi with her colleague, the European Council President, to ensure that that these types of events do go as planned in future. And we cannot, of course, add anything that is not in the treaties, and there is no way that we would suggest that one president would wish to speak on behalf of the European Council President on matters of foreign affairs, for example. Thank you. I can see on my screen that You are asking for the floor again. Go ahead.
Dernier follow-up.
Or one final follow-up then. Well, thank you. That's the usual thing about these remote press conferences. Anyway, my question is quite simple. Have you, by any chance, read the mail sent by Seibert, or is it just a summary that's been given to you?
I will not say what I have read or not read, Jean. Thank you. Let's leave it at that. So, I'll now move on to Griselda.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I would like to know whether the President of the Commission will broaden the debate and get the Parliament involved in this discussion of protocol order, which they want to, change, especially in relations with the Council. Will this come up in the Conference of Presidents tomorrow at the Parliament?
No. The President of the European Commission does not have this wish to be part of that debate or not. That's not how things work. If the Parliament invites the President to be part of that debate, she will take advantage of that, as she always does. Thank you. Christian now.
Pardon, Griselda, tu as une question de suivi.
Griselda, follow-up question, sorry. Griselda, go ahead.
Est-ce que tu peux confirmer?
Can you confirm if she will be speaking at the meeting of the Conference of Presidents? It's not just about questions of protocol, but will she be going to that meeting at all?
Griselda, you keep saying whether she will attend. It is part of the institutional procedure that they would issue an invitation. I have not seen any such invitation for tomorrow, but we shall wait and see. Perhaps once there is an official invitation, I will be able to update you. But at my latest according to my latest information, we have not had any update on such an invitation. Thank you. David, please.
Oui, merci, Eric.
Yes, thank you, Eric, and good morning, everybody. Given the image that you're putting across with this request to find some modus vivendi, some working arrangements between the two presidents, do you think that that's the right message to be sending to European citizens?
Écoute.
Listen. Well, we have seen the impact of this debate throughout the course of last week, following what happened in Ankara. And so it seems important to settle once and for all these matters of mission organisation for such trips. I don't think this is a subject that really merits so many questions, but I am, of course, happy to answer your questions here. I think you're right to point out, I haven't understood everything you said, but allow me to interpret it. I think this is a subject that is of interest to us here in Brussels. Perhaps it's simply because we are so focused here. But I think it is, of course, up to the presidents to decide how they proceed. I think that the message they presented together to President Erdogan went well, and you were able to see that from the press briefing.
Alors, je vois.
I can see that Philippe, you have a question, but Interactio isn't working for him. Can we expect a communication after this meeting? Well, we never comment on the weekly meetings between the presidents of the two institutions. So there are no plans at this stage to publish a communication following that meeting.
Voilà qui clôt.
I think that brings us to the end of that topic. We can now go back to foreign affairs. I will therefore hand the floor to Keteva.
Is it okay?
It is absolutely okay, Ketan. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My question is again about Georgia, as there is no deal between political parties. Everyone is waiting what President Michel and High Rep will decide and how the mission of Danielson will continue. So can you update us? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A question for Peter.
Thank you and good afternoon. Well, the update actually contains the repetition of the main messages which have been sent to Georgia repeatedly over the last few days and weeks. Apparently, the mission or the mediation effort by Mr. Danielson until now was not successful because there was no political will, neither on the side of governing parties, the ruling parties and opposition parties, to agree on the compromise proposal which he put forward. So now the EU leadership, primarily the President of the Council and the High Representative Borrell, are currently reflecting on the next steps. This reflection is still ongoing, so there is nothing specific on the results or dates I could inform you about, but the reflection is ongoing and the message of the EU stays the same. The compromise solution to the crisis in Georgia can be found if the leaders of Georgia's ruling and opposition parties demonstrate the necessary political courage, maturity, and readiness to compromise.
Thank you very much. I pass the floor now to Tamar, who had been the first, I think, to ask a question on foreign relations.
Just short follow-up to Peter. Peter, do you know if ministers will discuss the Georgian issue on 19th of March on informal video meeting? And also, do you know some information about possible involvement of some ministers in the mediation process? Because some media in Georgia, they make statements and they tell that some ministers can visit Georgia. Can you tell us about something about this, if you know? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Tamar. Thank you. Well, we don't elaborate on various media speculations. Bottom line is there is currently internal reflection ongoing in the follow-up to the two efforts of Mr. Danielson to solve or to help to solve the crisis in Georgia, the political crisis in Georgia. And this is what I can confirm is going on between the President of the Council and the High Representative Borrell. When it comes to the agenda of the FAC, which indeed will take place via video conference, the agenda is still under discussion in the relevant bodies, but as always, we will publish the agenda very soon.
Are there other questions on the Georgia file for the moment? Ella is vaccine. So please unraise your hand if your question is not on foreign relations. I really insist that we exactly have a bit of rigor on this. So I had Lukasz, is your question on Georgia? It does not seem to be the case. So I now move to Oliver, who had a question on another foreign relations issue. Oliver, you have the floor. Hi.
Hello, hi. I don't see myself, but I hope you hear me.
You.
Yes, that's good. Depends on, but that's another question.
It is good, Oliver. It is good. Go ahead.
What a week. My question is on Montenegro and the story that's been going on for a week now. I think it was also picked up by the Financial Times that the new Montenegro is apparently asking the European Union to pick up the tab for an ill-fated highway project financed by the Chinese, which apparently turned out to be the most expensive highway in the world. Montenegro can't pay this and is on the hook for about €1 billion. I read the reaction of a Commission spokesperson, an unnamed one, in the article, but I'd still be interested in your view. how come Montenegro picks up such a huge debt, is now asking for the European Union, and puts the European Union in a very tight spot politically and also financially? Can you give us your general thinking about this problem, which might occur also in Bosnia, in Macedonia, and some other places where the Chinese have been financing huge gargantuan infrastructure projects? Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. I don't know whether Peter is in a position to answer this question, perhaps on behalf of Anna, who is on holiday this week. But Peter, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Oliver. Well, I mean, the bulk of your question should be addressed really to the Montenegrin authorities, because we will not be trying to explain their motivations and justify their actions. Overall, I mean, let me recall one important thing, that the EU is already now the largest provider of financial assistance to Montenegro, the largest investor and the largest trade partner. And the same goes for many of the partners in the Western Balkans. We work very closely with them when it comes to development of economic issue, of infrastructure, for example, to boost the economic development, speed up the process of the EU integration and the necessary reforms, and also to ensure the post-coronavirus recovery. And you are aware that we have the economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans, which is mobilizing up to 9 billion euros of funding for investment flagships in the areas of transport, energy, green and digital transition, etc., sustainable development and jobs. Now, when it comes to the actions by the partner countries in taking loans or entering economic relations with other partners, I mean, every country is free to establish their own investment objectives. When we are talking now specifically about Montenegro and China, the EU has concerns over the socio-economic and financial effects of some of China's investment that the sum of China's investments can have in the country, because there is the risk of macroeconomic imbalances and debt dependency. But again, the motivation for undertaking such steps, taking such loans, needs to be checked with the Montenegrin authorities. I can only repeat that we are the largest provider of financial assistance, trade partner. We do a lot with Montenegro and other partners in the Western Balkans in order to help them on their way to align with EU standards, with the reforms and all the other things, and we continue to stand by them, but we are not repaying the loans they are taking from third parties.
I think that last sentence in particular was very, very clear. Oliver, you have a follow-up.
Yes. Hi. Yeah. Thank you. That was very helpful already. Yeah, Peter, you said the European Commission has concerns about some of China's investment actions in that country, Montenegro. Does that extend to other countries as well? For example, to the member country Croatia, where the bridge to the peninsula of Pelješac has been awarded. That contract has been awarded to a public Chinese company. And it's being paid out of the EU budget. And some people argue that maybe this wasn't a particularly wise idea as well. In retrospect, was this contract a good idea? And can you give us an update of where these works are? Because I think the contract was awarded 1 or 2 years ago, so there should already be some progress on the construction. Thank you.
Peter.
Well, since Croatia is a member state, it's not really for me to comment on the aspects of what the member state is doing in terms of investment and development of the infrastructure. And since Croatia is no longer in the enlargement nor in the foreign relations portfolio, I really cannot answer this question from my side.
That's a very good point, Peter, despite the fact that the investment may have come from China. So, Oliver, I think that on this we will have to come back. We will have to come back to you after we have looked into it. Okay, let's continue on foreign affairs. Alain.
Oui, non, bonjour. Pour moi,
No, for me, it wasn't about foreign affairs. It was about the health situation in Brazil. Is this for now or for later?
Enfin, la situation sanitaire au Brésil.
No, on the health situation for Brazil, that may fall outside of this particular field, so bear with us. Please do keep your hand up, otherwise it's hard. Please put your hand down, otherwise it's hard for us to manage the list. Salam.
Question is about the attacks on Natanz, the Iranian nuclear facility. I don't know if you have contacted the Iranian, and what do you think if this attack will make the talks after 2 days on Wednesday actually more difficult with the Iranian, and have you contacted the Israeli side, especially that Israel refused the talks in Vienna? So any comment about this situation?
Thank you. Peter.
Thank you, Salam. I mean, let's clarify one thing. I mean, it's not that Israel refused talks in Vienna in the framework of the JCPOA, because Israel is not party of the JCPOA. So that's one thing. What we are doing and coordinating right now in Vienna is the process related to Iranian nuclear program to JCPOA, and that takes place with participation of the parties of the JCPOA. Israel is not party, and with the US, of course. Now, on the question regarding what happened in Natanz, of course, we are following this very closely and with concern. The reports regarding the incident which took place during the weekend at the nuclear facility in Natanz, which could have been an act of sabotage. This incident should be clarified thoroughly. There has no been official attribution, and there are several accusations of which we are aware, but it needs to be clarified thoroughly what happened and who is behind this. But I would like to stress that as these discussions about bringing the JCPOA back on track to its full implementation are ongoing currently in Vienna, any attempt to derail them, to undermine them, has to be fully rejected. And all questions related to Iranian nuclear program need to be resolved through diplomatic means, because there is no other alternative, no other sustainable alternative.
Thank you. Let us stick to issues related to the nuclear deal with Iran. Christian. Salam, you have a follow-up, sorry.
My question is if Israel repeated, because since last week, by example, there is another attack. There were another attack on an Iranian ship. So this attacks, if will be repeated several times, I think that it will put a pressure on Iran, and there might be a reaction on this, and it might be affect the negotiation or the talks in Vienna. Don't you think that? So will the EU put any pressure on Israel to stop these attacks, especially that Israel now start saying that, yes, it's us who did this, or there, at least on media, the Israeli media. So there is Israel admitting now what is happening, whether in Natanz or on the ship in the Red Sea. Thank you.
Thank you, Salam. Again, as far as I know, there was no official attribution of who is behind the latest incident in Natanz. And the bottom line for us is that we are saying that we are rejecting any attempts to undermine or to derail the ongoing diplomatic activities to try to resolve all the open questions regarding Iranian nuclear deal. We try to resolve them through diplomatic means currently in Vienna in the ongoing process of talks and negotiations of the parties of the JCPOA, and through our contacts with the United States. Everything that contributes to increasing tensions in the region, that is not conducive towards these negotiations, needs to be rejected, because in the end, if you don't have a diplomatic solution to this important issue, and the Iranian nuclear program is an important issue for the regional stability, for the international stability, then you have to follow the diplomatic means. Otherwise, you cannot bring about sustainable solutions, and everything else is just increasing the regional instability.
Thank you, Peter. Nous continuons sur le même...
We will continue on the same subject. Christian.
Oui, Peter.
Yes. Peter, why do you say rejected, not condemned? This sabotage is clearly that's what it is. That will hold up the nuclear program. Is it something you're rejecting or something you're condemning? I'd also like to pick up on the on Montenegro. That is a real problem for the European Commission. Maybe not for Peter and his services, but for other services. Can we accept the certain number of member states or EU partners on the pathway to the EU start relations with a predatory partner? China lends money, they know it can't be paid back, and they grab assets, they grab land. Is this something that the Commission can allow to happen? Can't they make recommendations to these partners? This is a subject which is was led at the time by President Macron during the financial crisis. Some mistakes were made, and we didn't have strategic infrastructure. And some of this infrastructure fell into the hands of third countries. This question of Montenegro is not just a straightforward foreign affairs issue. It's a long-term issue. If partners get into debt with China, that's going to be a problem for their survival and for their autonomy.
Thank you. Peter will first take your question on Iran.
Merci.
Yes. So I say we reject any attempts to undermine the diplomatic efforts for full implementation of the agreement with Iran. That is the term that we have chosen. One important point. We must clarify what exactly happened in this incident. We haven't yet got the official details. There are, however, different interpretations. And what is important for us is verification, checking the facts, and once we have those facts, we will decide what action needs to be taken. And I can only, therefore, repeat, we reject any attempts to undermine or weaken diplomatic efforts on the nuclear agreement, and we still need to clarify the facts in detail as quickly as possible. Thank you. Thank you, Christian. I didn't see that you had a question, a follow-up question on Montenegro, so now we will try to answer that question. So the question you have on the link between enlargement and the issue of Chinese investment in candidate countries like Montenegro. Petra, do you want to add anything on this?
No, je pourrais seulement répondre.
No, I can only repeat what I've already said in English, what I said to Olivier. Partner countries, third countries are free to make their choices on their investments and economic relations. Thank you. Are there any other questions for us on the topic of the Iran nuclear agreement? Jean.
Tu m'as entendu?
Oui, non, je t'ai pas entendu, mais je t'entends maintenant.
Excuse-moi, je dis...
It's on another subject. You can give me the floor afterwards if that's better.
Mose.
Okay, Mose, you have the floor.
Mais Jean, je te demanderai de baisser.
Jean, please put your hand down.
Collègues qui ont demandé la parole avant toi. Et donc, il faut que je leur donne une chance.
Please. Mose, you have the floor.
Very much, Eric. I have also a small follow-up question to Peter about this incident or accident in Natanz in Iran. And that is, how does the EU in fact react against it or about it? Because it's also a matter of Iran's, let's say, increasing violations of its commitments to the nuclear deal in the middle of ongoing talks. So that's also, I suppose, a matter of concern. So does EU also, let's say, reject that the party to the deal, to ECPR, continues to violate it after they have started talks to return to it?
Thank you, Mose. Indeed, I mean, we were never making any secret of our concerns regarding Iran's decisions, actions, or statements that are bringing Iran away from the full compliance with the commitments stemming from the JCPOA. But this is exactly the objective of the talks which are ongoing now very intensively over the last week, and they will continue this week, to try to solve all the outstanding issues, all the open issues about how to bring the JCPOA back on track through diplomatic means in the process of negotiations. So all questions, open questions, or even problems related to the Iranian nuclear program need to be addressed through these talks and through this process, which is currently ongoing in Vienna and will continue also this week. So this is what we are engaged in as the coordinator of the JCPOA, and this is what we are urging everyone to do. Stick to the process, don't undermine it, and continue using diplomatic means to solve the issue.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions on foreign affairs for us today? Lukáš.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me? I have a question on the eastern Ukraine. What do you know actually about current situation in that region? Should we expect an escalation on conflict between Russia and Ukraine in the next days? And I would like to know whether are you in contact with Moscow and Kyiv, and also European Union capitals on that matter? Should we expect any meetings on the European level in the next days? Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you, Lukáš. Well, hopefully there will not be escalation. Hopefully there will not be conflict. This would be really, really unacceptable. And all the current contacts and diplomatic efforts which are ongoing are actually aimed at preventing this. Now, you know that, or you might know, but Ukraine will be one of the points on the agenda of the forthcoming meeting of the foreign ministers of the FAC, which will take place via video conference. And the European Union, its member states and the institutions, we are following very closely and with severe concern the worsening of the security situation in the eastern Ukraine and Russian troops movements close to the Ukrainian border and also in the illegally annexed Crimea. And the EU has called several times through the High Representative, but also through the individual leaders of the EU member states for calm, for the escalation. And we stress that the full implementation of the Minsk agreements is the only way forward and guarantee for the political and peaceful solution to the conflict in the eastern Ukraine. And we are welcoming in this context the efforts and important steps Ukraine under President Zelensky is doing in this regard. And we are calling upon Russian authorities to refrain from any steps that would lead to further tensions and to step up the efforts on the side of Russia to implement Minsk agreement. So the contacts are ongoing on various levels between various actors, between the member states, institutions. This is discussed and followed very closely internally by the EU, and it will be peaking basically in the discussion of the foreign ministers next Monday.
Thank you very much. This closes the chapter on foreign relations, and we go back, unless, David, you have a question on foreign relations? No. Okay, then we go back to Ella, who had a question on vaccines right at the beginning of this midday briefing. Ella, you have the floor.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great, thanks. Great. Mixed reviews on the microphone of this headset sometimes. So Belgium has confirmed that it's had its first deliveries of Johnson & Johnson vaccines today. Are you aware, or can you confirm of other vaccine deliveries from Johnson & Johnson to other EU countries? Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. A question for Peter. Oh, sorry, for Stefan. Apologies. Stefan.
Hello. The audio was not very clear for me, but I think the question was, where do we stand with the deliveries for the Johnson & Johnson? Is that the question?
Whether we could confirm that Belgium had received its first delivery of Johnson & Johnson, and whether other EU countries had received Johnson & Johnson vaccines. But, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. What we can say regarding the Johnson & Johnson deliveries is that they are indeed on track, as agreed, and that indeed the first doses are leaving the warehouses for the member states today. So deliveries are on track, as was agreed with the company. Thank you.
Yeah, Ella, I think in general, on issues of deliveries to individual countries, you really need to talk to the countries concerned, because as you know, it is the countries who fix the precise delivery schedule with the companies with whom we have signed advanced purchasing agreements. So we do not necessarily centralize this information and communicate on it publicly. It's up to the member states to do that. So we have now opened the floor on issues related to vaccines. So are there other questions on this issue? Please only keep your hand raised if your question is on vaccines. Laura.
Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson promised early deliveries of their doses, but on the other hand, AstraZeneca halted their contracted deliveries for this week. I wanted to ask if it's possible for the Commission to renegotiate a cut-down contract with AstraZeneca at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan.
Thank you very much. Well, you know that there are issues with the production and the delivery of vaccines by the company AstraZeneca. You're aware of this. This is one of the reasons why we have indeed launched or sent a letter to launch the dispute resolution with the company. We have been in contact with the company for a long time. We continue to be in contact with the company to discuss issues to make sure that timely deliveries take place of a sufficient number of doses, and this is what our work and our action is now focused on, to make sure that we have delivery of doses. That's the focus of our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tommaso.
Yes, hi, thank you for the floor. I still have a question on AstraZeneca. So the Commission on March the 19th sent a letter to the company to complain the delays and to start a dispute resolution mechanism, as Stefan just mentioned. Did you receive any official reply from AstraZeneca? And if yes, can you share the content with us? If no, what are the consequences of such indifference towards the EU legal action? And also another question on vaccines, if I may. The Bulgarian Prime Minister Borisov yesterday said that contracts between the EU and Pfizer are being signed for 900 million vaccines at the price of €19.50 for each dose. Now, I know you cannot comment on the price, but would you at least confirm the amount of doses booked for the next 2 years? Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan on both points.
Thank you very much. Indeed, on the 19th of March, we launched this dispute resolution process, following approval, by the way, by the member states, because, as you know, our joint strategy, EU vaccine strategy, is a joint strategy, also not only when it comes with regard to negotiation of contracts, but also when it comes to the implementation of the contracts. The Commission and the member states, as you know, were particularly concerned about the insufficient deliveries of doses, which was not in line with commitments in the contract, in the advanced purchase agreement. The Commission and the company have indeed met, and the Commission still expects the company to clarify a number of outstanding issues. That's, I think, what I can say with regard to the ongoing discussions between AstraZeneca and the Commission. With regard to your second question, you are absolutely right that we have never done that, and we're not going to break that rule in the press room. We do not talk about prices of potential contracts. We indeed do not do that. What I would like to do, however, is maybe draw your attention to the objectives which are behind this initiative that has been taken. As the European Union, we need obviously to be prepared for the next stages of the pandemic. That means that we have to be prepared for 2022 and later. We need to be particularly prepared for the challenges that are ahead of us, such as the fact that there is a need of a second booster. There is the fact that we need to be ready, of course, to deal with variants, current variants and future variants, and we need to be aware of the need of vaccinating at a certain time children and teenagers. And so a reflection started also in line with the work that's done in the context of the HERA incubator. Following this reflection, the need there, we identified a need of almost 2 billion doses that would be needed to tackle indeed these challenges. And on this basis, we launched a contract after discussion in the steering board and after having received, of course, the support of the member states to go ahead, so that we're all better prepared to handle the challenges that are coming towards us as from 2022 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We continue on vaccines. Dave.
Hello, Dave Keating from France 24 here. There were reports in the German media over the weekend expressing concern the recent hiccups in Johnson & Johnson delivery to the U.S. or in the U.S. might be made up with from facilities in the European Union. So I have just two questions on that. One is, I know you can't comment on the specific breakdown of types of vaccines, but can you give us the latest figures for how many vaccine doses have been exported from the EU to the US, preferably since December instead of since 31st January, the start of the transparency mechanism? Second question, given that, as far as I'm aware, Johnson & Johnson is backloading its delivery for the second quarter to the end of the quarter, does the Commission believe that this would give justification to a country such as the Netherlands to block a shipment of Johnson & Johnson from the Netherlands to the United States?
Thank you. On your second question, I can already tell you that we will not have comments on hypotheticals on situations that might arise or might not arise. You know that we have a mechanism in place that includes a certain number of criteria which are looked at as a whole before a member state proposes a decision to the Commission, who then confirms or rejects that decision. But I give the floor to Miriam on your first question.
Thank you. Indeed, as you said, we do not comment on individual transactions, but we can confirm that the US has received around 1 million doses from the European Union under the export authorization mechanism. So we don't have the details of how many doses were exported before. We would also wish to reiterate that this mechanism is not an export ban. It's about having transparency on vaccine production and deliveries, and also about supply chains. So we must be very mindful of the fact that supply chains with the major vaccine producers are closely interconnected, and we should avoid as much as possible disrupting these supply chains.
Thank you. We continue with questions on vaccines. James.
Hi, good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Two very quick questions, if I may. On the Borisov comments about the contracts for 2022 and 2023, I mean, without going into specifics on the exact price, the Bulgarian Prime Minister has said that the Commission has agreed to pay more than on previous contracts for the Pfizer vaccine. Can you confirm that is the case? And my second question relates to the status on the UK-EU discussions over the Helix plant. Have there been any sort of developments in those discussions, because negotiations seem to be becalmed at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you. On your first question, no, we will not make any comment. Let me just point out that you would be well advised to be careful in comparing contracts which are not necessarily of the same nature, or won't be necessarily of the same nature. The first contract that you're referring to, like all the other contracts that we signed, in fact, they're not called contracts, they're called advanced purchasing agreements. They were agreements in which the Commission, on behalf of the EU, invested money into the companies in order to help them develop the vaccines. Now, subsequent contracts would be of a different nature, so you cannot really compare like with like. On your second question, I'm not quite sure whether there is anything that we can say. I turn to Stéphane.
No, indeed. I don't think from my side there is anything that I could add to this, Eric. Thanks.
Angela.
Yes, thank you. Hope you can. Okay. My question is on what Anthony Fauci said yesterday on the Italian state TV. He said that the surplus of vaccines from the United States of America won't be exported to Europe because they are evaluating the possibility to export it once they will have it to poorer countries. As the EU was counting a lot on the transatlantic collaboration as a strategic collaboration to have vaccines, I was wondering if you have a plan B. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't have only a plan B. We actually have a contract with AstraZeneca, which implies that they have factories that produce vaccines for Europe, and that is what we are counting on. Now, if AstraZeneca finds other solutions in order to supply the foreseen doses of vaccines to the European Union, it's a positive, but our plan is to make sure that the company delivers the doses based on what we have in our advanced purchasing agreement. Quentin.
Oui, bonjour Eric, est-ce que tu m'entends?
Yes, Eric, can you hear me?
Maybe easier. It's just a follow-up on what James questioned on the negotiation with the UK. Are they still meeting? Is Mrs. Rizzo still talking to the...
I hope we didn't cut you off. If we did, it wasn't our intention. You're back on.
Sorry,
back on.
I was cut off. Sorry for that. Okay, so will it be possible still to know if Mrs. Rizzo is still meeting or virtually or whether in London British counterparts to discuss on the vaccines, and what are the sticking issues on that? Thanks.
I'm not quite sure why you're referring to a specific member of the President's cabinet as being in charge of the negotiations with the United Kingdom. I certainly cannot confirm that information. And no, I have no specific updates to provide you with on the discussions with the United Kingdom at this stage. Naomi.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. It's about Johnson & Johnson. So there's reports that the deliveries have begun to EU countries. Can you give us any information about the quantity, where, the timing, that kind of thing? And then I have another question, which is about the protocol in Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Thank you. When you say the word protocol now, I have to think before. I'm not sure what subject we're talking about. On your question on Johnson & Johnson, we don't provide specific figures on delivery schedules for individual companies. But let me give the floor to Stéphane, just in case he wants to add something.
No, that's absolutely correct. I already said that the start of the deliveries is expected to take place in line with what was agreed. That's one thing. And the second, I also draw your attention to the figure of 55 million of doses which are expected to be delivered by Johnson & Johnson in the context of the second quarter. Don't forget also that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a one-dose vaccine. So this would allow to vaccinate 55 million people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alors, Raphaël, as you on vaccines, before we move to Alain's question, if it's on vaccines, you have the floor. If not, and you seem to have unraised your hand, okay. So we close the vaccine issue, and I give the floor to Alain.
Oui, merci, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Well, my question is a bit to do with vaccines. More and more experts and epidemiologists are getting alarmed about the situation in Brazil and the emergence of a large number of variants, some of which seem to be extremely resistant to current vaccines. There is also concern about the risk that these variants may reach Europe via plane travel. Several voices are calling for more checks at the arrival of flights from Brazil. I would like to know if this is a concern for the Commission, for Commissioner Kyriakides, and if so, do you have something up your sleeve? Because when Europe will start to recover, it would be pity for us to be dragged down again by these imported variants.
Well, first I will hand over to Stefan, and since this is a question about travel abroad, I may hand over to Adalbert. Stefan first.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. I think that the subject of variants is one that we are focused on, and that is why the Commission set up a task force to think about the best ways to address variants wherever they occur in the world. That is a very important issue, of course. And the emergence of new variants is something that is followed very closely by our ECDC colleagues to make sure that we are well prepared to take a sound, science-based approach to any emergence of variants. Of course, just to add to what I said, work within the task force and HERA and the incubator where we are considering how we can better manage variants. That has to be seen in combination with our intention to be better prepared by 2022-2023, where we intend to launch a new process for 2 billion doses in order to better meet demand or tackle any risks linked to variants. So yes, this is, of course, a crucial issue that is being followed via several commissioners, several agencies. Thank you. I'll now hand over to Adalbert for any additional information. Thank you. I just want to add that the Commission on the 25th of January suggested stricter measures than those currently in force for travel in response to these new viruses. Those measures were adopted by the Council on the 2nd of February. The Council recommendation on travel restrictions for those coming to the European Union, they do take into account the emergence of different variants of this virus. And this recommendation also sets out specific measures which can be taken for essential travel, which remains permitted. So essential travel coming to the EU from regions of the world where there are new variants. So these include measures like obligatory quarantine or obligatory testing for those persons who are travelling. And then it is up to the member states to implement measures which will best implement these recommendations. And the Commission only encourages member states to do everything they can to ensure that this is followed up correctly. Thank you. Alain, do you have a follow-up?
Oui, juste pour...
Yes, for both of you, one for each of you. You are saying that there are recommendations to member states, but the problem is that member states don't follow these recommendations perhaps as they should. Is there anything you can do about that? And secondly, just on the health aspect, I hear that you're raising concerns and that we need to be prepared and we have to make do with the means that we have at our disposal. But you have to get ready for something which is already happening, i.e. the arrival in Europe of variants which may be resistant to vaccines. So let's all get ready. I mean, hasn't now the time come to change up a gear?
Merci. Stéphane.
Thank you. Stéphane. Yes, thank you. Well, first and foremost, we are following a science-based approach. That is very important. EMA and ECDC are carrying out the necessary monitoring to ensure that we have the sound follow-up to any developments. And I set out the various different approaches that are being taken at this stage and how the Commission is carrying out its work. What happens in the task force, what happens within HERA incubator, and what the action taken by working via this one contract, which will allow us to better manage any appearance of new variants. And that is what we are doing so far. And Alain, on your second question, these are public health measures, and therefore that falls under the competence of the member states. I will now hand over to Rafaela.
Rafaela, you have the floor. If you can connect. You have to change your mic source. Yes.
I tried to. I hope it works. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Eric, 13 EU countries sent a letter to the Commission concerning the green certificates, the planned green certificates. And these countries, respectively the tourism ministers, call for 7 criteria, 7 targets these green certificates should meet and fulfill. So my question is, did you already study this letter? And what do you think about those 7 criteria? Are they in any way new to you, or do you already take them into account when trying to come forward with this green certificate? Thank you.
Thank you, Rafaela. I'm sorry, I'm not at all aware of this letter, and I'm not sure I understood. Are these 30 countries from outside the European Union or 13 countries from within the European Union? Apologies, but it was not clear for me, just so that we can see if we can track it down.
There are 13 EU countries.
Okay.
And they put forward 7 criteria concerning data protection, concerning that everyone has to be treated the same way, but 7 criteria. And I'm just wondering whether these criteria are new to you, or whether these criteria have already been taken into account when putting forward your proposal of a green certificate.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, you know our proposal as well as us, so I would ask you perhaps also to go and check yourself whether you see that there is a correspondence between what we have put forward and what the member states are doing. But nevertheless, let's see if Christian can tell us something about this letter, whether we have received it already or not. Christian.
Yes.
You're on screen.
Hi.
You're on screen.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Eric. And hello. Can you hear me? Because it's showing red. Okay, very good. Okay. Well, thank you, Rafaela, for the question. We've seen the press reports about this meeting and an announced letter. So far as I'm aware, we have not received this letter yet, so I'm not in a position to comment on its content. What I can say is that the digital green certificate is well on track on European level. You've seen that the Parliament had already decided for an urgent procedure on this, and also in the Council work is advancing well. And as far as I'm aware, there's another point on this actually this week. So this is where we stand. We have proposed it. We welcome that it's moving, that the process is moving well ahead at the European level, and of course we will look at this letter once we receive it.
Thank you, Christian. So let me go back to Jean. Jean, tu avais demandé la parole de nouveau.
Jean, you asked for the floor again.
Ah, il semble que Jean.
It seems that Jean has disconnected. My colleagues are telling me, however, that after I said the president went to Germany, there have been comments on social media about whether she respected the Belgian COVID measures. Of course, the President of the European Commission respects all of the Belgian COVID restrictions and rules. She has, however, gone back to her country of origin to see her family, which is allowed in this case. So I can't see any other questions. David, sorry, I didn't see you. You have the floor.
Oui, merci, Eric.
Yes, thank you, Eric. It's a type of follow-up, really. I'm not going to ask her if she's going to fill in the passenger locator form, or if she's going to do the quarantine or taking tests. But it is a type of follow-up, because as far as I know, there are several European officials who have gone home to their home countries, even if they didn't have any valid reason for, in the eyes of the Belgian authorities. including European Commission officials. So I would like to know, are there any checks in place? Or is it just people were invited to follow Belgian rules?
Thank you, David. The answer is a simple one. We are not a police authority. It is not up to us to find out whether those resident in Belgium are respecting national law. It is the prerogative of Belgian authorities to do that. Thank you. So I believe that brings us to the end of our midday press briefing. And have a nice afternoon. I will see you at the same time tomorrow.